This is the USS Massachusetts, the Navy's newest nuclear attack submarine, just commissioned in Boston Harbor, about 200 yards from the USS Constitution, which has been tied up in the same water for 228 years. What you're looking at is about 10% of the boat. The other 90% is underwater. And somewhere in Moscow, that fact just ruined an admiral's afternoon. The number that actually matters about this submarine is 0. That's the amount of noise she's supposed to make, because everything else she can do, hunting, spying, striking, hiding, depends on her being the quietest thing the ocean has ever tried to find. And the reason she's that quiet has nothing to do with magic. It has to do with something no other Navy can do. She's 377 feet of matte black steel, 34 feet wide at the beam, and 7,800 tons underwater. More than the World War II destroyer your grandfather served on, all packed into a steel tube built to live below the waves. $3.45 billion of American engineering. A nuclear reactor core built to run for 33 years without ever being refueled. And a crew of 135 sailors will spend the next 3 decades doing something 3 of the world's largest navies have spent 20 years trying to copy and still can't. By tomorrow morning, she'll be gone, underwater, heading somewhere her captain won't put on paper. The next time the world sees the USS Massachusetts, it'll be in a press release 3 months from now, when she's tied back up at this pier. And even then, no one will tell you where she went or what she did when she got there. This is the boat. This is the next 33 years. Submarine warfare comes down to one rule. Whoever hears the other guy first wins. Everything else is paperwork. That's it. That's the whole game. The quieter boat hears the noisier boat from farther away. The quieter boat shoots first. The noisier boat never gets a chance to shoot back because it never even knew there was a fight. The Virginia class is the quietest thing in the ocean. Russian Yuzhny-class submarines, Moscow's newest and best attack boats, and Chinese Type 093s, Beijing's frontline hunters, are decent. In exercises, they still can't find a Virginia class until she wants to be found. And she rarely wants to be found. So how do you make a 7,800-ton steel tube quieter than the ocean around it? You start at the back. Picture a Soviet submarine captain in 1985. His propeller is spinning at high RPM. The blade tips are moving fast enough to rip the water apart. Tiny pockets of vacuum forming and collapsing behind each bubble. That collapse makes a noise. The noise travels. 100 miles away, an American sonar tech has his coffee interrupted by a signature he recognizes from a training tape. The Soviet captain has no idea he just announced himself. That's cavitation. It's the enemy every submariner fights. And it's why, if you look at the stern of the Massachusetts, you'll notice something missing. There's no propeller, at least not one you can see. What the Navy put there instead is called a pump jet propulsor, a multi-bladed rotor spinning inside a fixed outer housing. That housing is called the shroud. The exact blade count, the pitch of each blade, and the internal geometry, that's the single most classified thing on the entire submarine. When the Massachusetts goes into dry dock for maintenance, this section gets curtained off from workers who don't have the specific clearance to even look at it. A regular propeller is like a ceiling fan running at full speed in a quiet room. Everyone knows it's on. A pump jet is the same fan installed inside a wall, ducted, sealed, and silent. The shroud keeps the turbulence contained before it can talk. The pump jet lets her run faster before she starts making the noise that gives her away. Faster or quieter? Pick one, unless you're a Virginia class. But the stern is just one piece of the puzzle. Run your hand along the rest of the hull and you're not exactly touching steel. You're touching rubber. Without anechoic tiles, a 200-foot steel submarine pings like a cathedral bell under active sonar. The first warning would be a torpedo on the scope. The entire outer skin is covered in these tiles, rubber panels about the size of a dinner plate, bonded directly to the hull. They absorb incoming active sonar pulses instead of reflecting them back to whoever pinged. Shout in a tile bathroom and the sound bounces right back at you. Shout in a padded recording studio and it just gets swallowed. That's what these tiles do to enemy sonar. Inside the boat, there's a second trick. Lose one bad engine mount on a 7,800-ton submarine and a Russian sonar operator 40 miles away suddenly has something to look at. The Virginia-class fix is called rafting. The entire propulsion plant, Turbines, pumps, reduction gears, all of it sits on shock absorbers, isolated from the hull like a room built inside a room. The vibration from machinery never actually reaches the steel. The hull stays silent while the guts of the boat work. One more thing quietness buys you: time. She's powered by an S9G nuclear reactor that will never need refueling for the entire life of the ship. That's 33 years of operation on a single core. You'll fill up your car about 4,000 times before this submarine ever has to gas up, which means she can sit silent at a checkpoint for months at a stretch, waiting. The Russians have spent 20 years trying to copy this. They got close, on paper, with the Yasin class. Paper is not the ocean. Being unseen is only half the job, though. Being quiet is useless if you can't see where you're hunting. And the way the Massachusetts sees would break every submarine movie you've ever watched. The mast breaks the surface at night off the coast of Yemen. It's the width of a coffee can. A camera on top pans 360 degrees. Infrared picks up the heat signature of a patrol boat 8 miles away. A signals intelligence receiver pulls down encrypted radio chatter from the shore. All of that data flows through a fiber optic cable down to the hull, where a captain sitting 60 feet below the surface watches the feed on a flat panel display. Same picture the sonar supervisor is looking at, also the same picture the weapons officer is looking at. Nobody is pressed up against an eyepiece. Nobody is spinning in a circle calling out bearings. That image, the one you've seen in every submarine movie since Hunt for Red October, is gone. For 100 years, submarines had periscopes, long tubes of glass and mirrors that physically penetrated the pressure hull. The tube ran through a sleeve in the hull itself, which meant the control room had to be directly beneath it. The captain had to physically stand at the base and look through the glass. That's why every old submarine movie is set in the same cramped room with one guy hogging the eyepiece. The Massachusetts doesn't have a periscope. She has 2 photonics masts. They sit outside the pressure hull. They don't penetrate anything. Imagine trading a telescope you had to physically stand behind for a drone camera that streams 4K video to any screen in the building. That's the leap. The control room doesn't have to be under the mast anymore. The Virginia class puts the control room in the middle of the boat, and the photonics feed shows up on big flat panel displays. The whole watch team sees the same picture at the same time. Decisions get made in seconds instead of minutes. But the mast only works on the surface or at periscope depth. Below that, the Massachusetts hunts with her ears. And her ears are ridiculous. Think about this. You're in a dark room. Something moves. You tilt your head to figure out where. Your brain uses the tiny difference in arrival time between your 2 ears, a few milliseconds, to place the sound in space. The Massachusetts does the same thing, except her ears are spread across 400 feet of hull and another mile of cable dragged behind her. Up front in the bow is a massive, large aperture bow array. Thousands of hydrophones packed into a horseshoe-shaped structure that replaced the old ball-shaped sonar domes. Those are her main ears. Running down both flanks of the hull are the lightweight wide aperture arrays. Long strips of sensors that use the hull length of the submarine to triangulate where a sound is coming from. And trailing behind her in the water is a cable about a mile long called the TB29A towed array. It lets her listen through and around her own propulsion noise. Your ears give you stereo, enough to tell left from right in a bar. The Massachusetts hears in surround sound with cinematic subwoofers. An enemy submarine that can't hear her first loses the engagement before it starts. And most of them can't. The sonar techs who work these arrays spend more time listening to whale songs than most marine biologists. If you want to know what a humpback sounds like at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in the North Atlantic, ask a submariner. They've got opinions. Finding a target is one problem. Doing something about it is another. And the Massachusetts has 2 answers. One for the enemy submarine 20 miles away, and one for the building 1,000 miles inland. The hatch on the forward deck pops open. A Tomahawk missile rides a compressed gas charge to the surface, breaches the water, and hangs in the air for a fraction of a second. The booster ignites, then the turbojet lights. The missile drops to about 100 feet off the ground and starts flying at 550 miles per hour toward a building 1,000 nautical miles away. The submarine is already gone. That's how 12 of them leave the Massachusetts, one right after another, from 2 circular hatches flush with the forward deck, just behind the sail. Those are the Virginia Payload Tubes, or VPTs. Earlier Virginia-class boats carried 12 individual launch tubes, starting with Block 3. The Navy swapped all 12 for 2 big tubes holding 6 Tomahawks each. The Massachusetts is a Block 4. 12 Tomahawks ready to leave the deck in under 3 minutes. That's 12 cities that wake up tomorrow with one fewer government building. One Tomahawk weighs 3,500 pounds. It carries a 1,000-pound warhead, and it hits a target within a few meters of wherever the GPS coordinates told it to go. From a patrol position in the Arabian Sea, the Massachusetts can hit a building in Tehran. Pick the window. From the Philippine Sea, she can hit Beijing. The submarine never surfaces, never closes the distance, never even says hello. 12 Tomahawks, each one costs about $2 million. The whole magazine is a $24 million decision a submarine captain can make in 60 seconds without asking anyone's permission. Get the targeting wrong and the Navy spends a year in front of Congress. Get it right, and a whole country's radar network stops existing overnight. The captain has 60 seconds to be sure every time they pull the trigger. 12 buildings that stop existing. And nobody knows where the shot came from until it's already over. But the VPTs are for hitting stuff far away. For closer work, other submarines and surface ships, she's got a different tool. Picture a 9,000-ton warship cruising at 20 knots. A Mark 48 torpedo closes from beneath, guided by a thin wire running all the way back to the submarine that fired it. In the last 1,000 yards, the wire cuts loose. The torpedo's own sonar takes over, locks in, and runs the last stretch itself. It doesn't hit the ship. It runs underneath the keel, dead center, and detonates there. A 650-pound warhead makes a gas bubble the size of a house directly below the hull. That bubble lifts the middle of the ship into the air. A fraction of a second later, the bubble collapses, and the hull drops back down into the void where the water used to be. Imagine snapping a pencil over your knee. The ship breaks its own back. 2 or 3 of those along the keel, and it's folded in half. That's what the Mark 48 does. Here's how it does it. 4 21-inch torpedo tubes run through the bow, angled slightly outward. Each one holds a Mark 48 Advanced Capability ADCAP Mod 7 heavyweight torpedo, wire-guided out to maximum range, which means the submarine can actually steer it for the entire run. 19 feet long, north of 55 knots, range somewhere around 30 miles. The last time a U.S. submarine sank an enemy warship in combat was in 1945. The Mark 48 has been sitting in tubes waiting for this moment for 80 years. The Massachusetts carries the latest version. Patience is a virtue. 12 Tomahawks and 4 torpedo tubes is a lot of hardware for a boat that spends most of her time hiding. But the Massachusetts isn't going to sit at a pier and look pretty. The question is what she actually does out there in the dark. Start with the hunting. Imagine the Massachusetts 3 months into a deployment, sitting absolutely silent in the GIUK gap. That's the stretch of ocean between Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom that every Russian submarine has to pass through to reach the open Atlantic. A Russian Yasen-class boat pushes south from the Kola Peninsula, a chunk of northern Russia where Moscow bases its submarine fleet. Her captain believes he's undetected, and against almost any other navy on Earth, he'd be right. But the Massachusetts towed array picks up a signature faint enough that it could be a trawler. It isn't. The Massachusetts doesn't light up active sonar. That would broadcast her position to everyone inside 100 miles. She stays passive. She just follows. She feeds the track up to a P-8 Poseidon overhead, the Navy's sub-hunting patrol plane, basically a 737 with torpedoes in the belly, to another Virginia-class boat 50 miles away, and to the carrier strike group 400 miles south. Everybody knows exactly where the Russian is. The Russian knows nothing. Here's the cruelest part of how this ends. He finishes his patrol. He returns to Murmansk. He writes a successful deployment report. He puts in for a promotion. We watched him the entire way. He'll never know. He'll retire in 2024 still thinking he ran clean. Now imagine her parked off a hostile coastline instead. The photonics mast slides above the waterline, pulling in radar emissions from shore, cell tower traffic, encrypted military communications, some guy's phone call to his wife. The Massachusetts can sit off an enemy coast for weeks, sometimes months, quietly filling hard drives with everything the enemy is broadcasting. All of it. The boring stuff too. She's not a spy satellite. She's a spy library sitting 20 feet off the beach. And the library doesn't show up on anyone's radar, anyone's sonar, or anyone's horizon scan. That's the watching. Here's the door kicking. Built into the hull is a lockout trunk. It's a small pressurized chamber that lets Navy SEALs exit the submarine while she's still submerged, 200 feet down, in the dark, in the cold, while the boat continues its patrol route and no one on the surface has any idea. For bigger teams, the Navy bolts a dry deck shelter onto the hull topside. That shelter holds a SEAL delivery vehicle, basically an underwater mini-sub that carries operators the last few miles to shore. The SEALs swim out while the Massachusetts is 200 feet below the surface. The boat never comes up. The only thing she leaves behind is a small ripple in the water that disappears in under a minute. By the time the operators hit the beach, the Massachusetts is already 20 miles away and 400 feet down, doing something else. And then there's the one everybody remembers: strike. The rule on opening night of any air campaign is simple. Launch from the wrong position and the missiles can't reach their targets. Launch too early and the surface ships lose surprise. The submarines go first because they can stay silent until the moment of release. March 2011, Libya. The first night of Operation Odyssey Dawn. The U.S. Navy fired 110 Tomahawks into Gaddafi's air defense network. A big portion of them came from submarines sitting quietly off the Libyan coast. His radar operators had no idea who was shooting at them. They only knew they were getting hit, and the hitting wasn't stopping. By morning, the Libyan air defense system had stopped existing. The Massachusetts carries 12 of those. One Virginia class parked off a coastline turns that whole country's shoreline into a weak spot. Somewhere right now, someone is briefing a Chinese naval officer that a Virginia-class submarine might be 20 miles from his task force. He has no way to confirm it. He also has no way to prove it's not. That's a Tuesday in his job. The Massachusetts makes it a longer one, which brings us back to the harbor where she started. The Constitution is 228 years old and still commissioned. She fought Barbary pirates with 44 guns and oak planks. She's still moored in the same harbor where the Massachusetts took her oath. The Massachusetts won't last that long. She'll serve about 33 years, what the reactor core can handle. Then the Navy will retire her, cut out her reactor compartment, bury it in a desert, and recycle the rest of the hull. Someone at Electric Boat is welding the next Virginia-class hull together right now. But for the next 3 decades, she'll disappear under the Atlantic and the Pacific and the Arctic, listening, watching, occasionally reminding the world's navies that the ocean isn't nearly as big as they think it is. The Massachusetts isn't the only American weapons platform built to operate invisibly until the moment it doesn't. Watch next how the B-2 Spirit hits targets no other aircraft can reach. Bye for now.